The Clean Power Hour is brought to you by CPS America, the maker of North America's #1 three-phase string inverter, with over 6 gigawatts shipped in the U.S. The CPS America product lineup includes three-phase string inverters ranging from 25 to 275 kW. Their flagship inverter, the CPS 250-275, is designed to work with solar plants ranging from 2 megawatts to 2 gigawatts. The 250-275 pairs well with CPS America's exceptional data communication, controls, and energy storage solutions. Go to chintpowersystems.com to find out more.
Those two goals together, you end up understanding that new build infrastructure is actually going to be very complicated because it takes a long time, consumes a lot of carbon debt today. You want to be ideally as close as possible to retrofitting to existing infrastructure, reutilizing or leveraging existing infrastructure. So that's how we look at it as well. What technology can we bolt onto today's infrastructure? Yeah?
Are you speeding the energy transition? Here at the Clean Power Hour, our hosts Tim Montague and John Weaver bring you the best in solar, batteries, and clean technologies every week. Want to go deeper into decarbonization? We do too. We're here to help you understand and command the commercial, residential, and utility solar, wind, and storage industries. So let's get to it. Together we can speed the energy transition.
Today on the Clean Power Hour, can technology save humanity from climate change? I'm Tim Montague, your host. Welcome to the Clean Power Hour. Check out all of our content at cleanpowerhour.com. Please give us a rating and a review on Apple and Spotify. Check out our YouTube channel and reach out to me on LinkedIn. I love connecting with my listeners. Today on the Clean Power Hour, my guest is Sebastian Heitmann. He is the co-founder of a venture capital firm called Extantia. Welcome to the show, Sebastian.
Hi, Tim. Great to see you, and great. Thanks for having me here on the show today.
I learned about your work from Nate Hagens' show. If you're listening to this and you don't know about Nate Hagens, please check out Nate Hagens, Hagens. He's a professor at the University of Minnesota, and he has a great show called The Great Simplification. That is how Nate couches what the transition that humanity is going through in the next 100 or 500 years. We don't know how quickly the transition is going to happen. But right now, humanity is riding this rocket ship of fossil fuels, which are incredibly energy dense, but they also have a side effect, which is that they're polluting the atmosphere, which is warming the earth, which is causing runaway climate change. And that's just one of the side effects, so to speak, of modern society. There are others, artificial biology, AGI. There are many things, many potential hazards and pitfalls that humanity is creating for itself, which is most likely the reason we don't see advanced civilizations knocking on our door, is really the assessment of many astronomers and astrophysicists. But anyway, Sebastian, you're a technologist, you're an investor. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to found Extantia and what is your mission in this life?
Yeah, a lot of questions. First of all, Nate is the person who actually whose thinking really resonates with me as well, and I think it's important that we have these forward thinkers like him who remind us from time to time that we might need to alter our path. Yeah, so we might disagree on the answers, how that alterated path should look like, but I think as a human being on this planet, we should embrace all of the ideas and listen to all sides of the story, and then see what kind of answers we come up with. So I think that's actually what makes us most unique as a species as well. That we're able, this ingenuity is actually limitless. We always come up with new ideas. But maybe to my own story, I never wanted to start a financial product in my life. Maybe it's a good starting point. I had the economist background and worked in different fields, but had been sort of a clean tech enthusiast, I would say, from the early days on. Yeah, also investor, clean tech 1.0 era. Paid my tuition fee there too. Yeah.
What would you call Clean Tech 1.0? Give us some examples of Clean Tech 1.0.
The rise of solar, mostly, to be honest. Yeah, the
Mm.
PV, when we started to see industrialization of PV, some wind too, but it was majority PV back then. When PV in the 2005, 6, 7 became an industry, which initially thought we have to produce in high wage countries like Europe or the US, and eventually China took all the market or most of it, simply because people were not willing to pay for better PV cells double the price, so they just bought two out of China.
Right.
Which I'm not against it, by the way. I think it's totally the right way it should be going. And China is very good at engineering to cost, yeah, in general, yeah. And we have to just recognize that they're often better than us doing this, yeah. So I'm not against it at all. I'm not a protectionist to say we should be onshoring this back to our industries here. I think it's nonsense. I think this is the way it goes, and it's good. But anyway, the companies back then really didn't have much of a great business model, other than duplicating. There was then the innovation just sort of at some point, just wasn't so breakthrough anymore. So it just came down to engineering to cost, and then a lot of them ended up not making it. Yeah.
So you're referring to this cost adoption curve, right? That
yes.
That technology like photovoltaics. I mean, it took 50 plus years for PV to go mainstream. It was invented in the 50s. Yes. The modern PV cell was invented in the 50s. And then in the early 2000s is when it kind of started to go mainstream. It wasn't until 2010, really, honestly, in the US that it went mainstream. We're 10 years behind Europe and China for a variety of reasons, which is very ironic because we invented the technology at Bell Labs in New Jersey, but we weren't the first to grab onto it. We have huge native fossil resources and cheap energy as a result, and so we're not as inspired to grab onto wind and solar and batteries and now geothermal, which we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about something called deep geothermal in this conversation, which is an amazing opportunity, right? Because it is basically an infinite source. Kind of like we see the sun, it's the inverse of the sun, but it's beneath our feet, and it's beneath everybody's feet everywhere on Earth if you can get there. But Sebastian, absolutely. What is it that forced you into clean tech 2.0, so to speak? You could have just stayed in clean tech 1.0 and gotten wealthy or continued to get wealthy, because there's still an opportunity. I mean, we have 30 years of runway of solarizing and installing wind and solar on the grid, right? The grid is today, let's just say 10% wind and solar, and tomorrow it's 80 or 90%. In 30 years, it'll be 80 or 90% wind and solar, but there's other stuff coming. Why did you go into 2.0?
I mean, I think it's just an evolution, to be honest. And I think 1.0 didn't go so well for most investors. So I think there was a time around 2012, 13, 14, roughly, when we all kind of woke up a little hangover from the fiesta, and saw that these business models are not as good as we hoped they would be. Also, quite a few US investors drank of the Kool-Aid and weren't so happy with it. But so there was actually a paper from MIT back then. It was called Why Clean Tech 1.0 Failed. I think most of us read that back then. Then we saw a couple of things coming together. There was a Paris Agreement was the big inflection point, where we, for the first time, agreed as a world that decarbonization is a priority and that carbon needs to have a price in order for that to happen. So Paris Agreement and the world committing to back then, I think 1.5 degrees, but for 2 degrees goal, later on adjusted. But there was some commonality amongst the world that this is now something we need to tackle. Other things came along as well. The EU started working on a taxonomy for like more broader ESG criteria, but which also encompass climate. So though that a few factors came together, we saw what Breakthrough Energy did. They were formed around that time, initially as the coalition, and then later on as the Breakthrough Energy Ventures, as we know today. So we saw a couple of initiatives. What we thought was missing back then, and dearly missing because we're also angel investors in some companies, was access to capital for founders in this space. It's been just quite difficult. There was no specific knowledge out there about how to invest in this type of asset class, and also the larger institutional investors would actually not touch it. or not much at least. Yeah. So like breakthrough was initially very much dominated by high net worth individuals. I would sometimes call it like a billionaire club, right? So our goal was to say, okay, this is not going to cut it. We need actually institutional capital, like capital from pension funds and insurance companies, where the majority of the world's capital is agglomerated. We need these type of people to come on board and back it as an asset class. And therefore, this only works if the solutions that people are working on are not just ecologically viable, but also economically viable. They need to be the cheaper solution. And solar showed that this is possible. Solar had a huge cost curve, coming down to being today, at a certain time of the day, by far the cheapest solution. Yeah. So this cost curve that solar shown is a pure cost engineering to cost curve that I think a lot of industries can show. If we put resources behind it and manpower behind it. So and wind also, by the way, had a similar trajectory. So these if you look at these energy forecasts from the mid 2000s, or what they were predicting and where solar will go cost wise, and you look at it today, they were completely wrong. Yeah, they completely underestimated the exponentiality of that cost curve. Yeah, how it would come down. So anyway, that all led to us to us saying, okay, we need more innovation in the space. How do we bring innovation to market? We need to fund the people who have the ideas. Huh? And there are good ideas out there, plenty of good ideas, but we need to fund them and make sure that they also execute well. This is also there's a lot of good ideas out there, but we need to find people who can really bring this to market, and not just scientific knowledge, but also just company building knowledge and how to build a viable industry. So all of that led to us founding this firm with the idea to build a sophisticated financial product for the institutional investor, for an investor who's really looking for stable returns. So our thinking in this is, people say like, yeah, but do we have to impact is important? Yeah, of course, impact is important, but also impact will never come if we don't scale. Every solution that we invest in has to solve what we call the trilemma. Trilemma consisting of economic viability, ecological viability, and resilience. Resilience means we don't want to invest into any topics that have supply chain restrictions, be it resource or geopolitical or any other restrictions. There needs to be a certain resilience factor. Like you mentioned earlier on, the US has a very resilient energy strategy, I would say. Unlike Europe, we're depending a lot on imports.
Well, it's just luck of the draw.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah,
right. We just happen to establish this continent-sized country that is rich in resources, including oil, gas, coal. I mean, we have massive fossil resources. I was looking at the size of the fossil industries compared to the renewable energy industry, and renewables are about 30% the size of the fossil industry in the United States. And today, and one of the, I'd like to, if we could, really shine a light on some of your portfolio companies and how you see the path forward to extracting 50 billion tons of carbon pollution from the economy. Okay, to net zero the economy, we're talking about 50 billion tons or 50 gigatons, and that's a good goal. We always want to remember that there's 1 trillion tons already in the atmosphere that got us to 420 ppm. PPMs are going up, my listeners, up, not down. We are still headed the wrong direction. And we also have to, while we're net zeroing the economy, we also have to suck the carbon out of the atmosphere to get back to 300, to what is considered a safe level of pollution in the atmosphere. But how do you see Extantia serving that goal of net zeroing the economy?
Well, it's our North Star, I would say. But maybe one statement like ahead of that. I mean, net zero economy is something desirable for sure, but in the end of the day, it's about living with a healthy planet. And a healthy planet is for sure from a carbon perspective net zero, but also it's an overshoot problem which has many different facets, and climate is one of them. So we generally believe in just a sustainable and regenerative economy, where we are able to reuse, recycle, reutilize infrastructure and resources. But that it's on the path to net zero economy as well. There's the same path, but it's maybe a little bit broader the way we view it. And of course, when we look at now from investment perspective, what are the topics that are interesting? It's quite simple. In the day, we understand what we call the climate stack. The problem is quite clear. Science is also quite clear where the majority of the emissions come from, and then we of course look at what areas have the best opportunity to decarbonize, through technology. It's always a technological edge that we have, but we're not somebody who would invest into build out of solar or wind farms. So we'd always look for a better PV cell or a highly efficient wind turbine or something in that area, or completely different areas. At the end of the day, it literally all boils down to energy. And energy does not mean electricity. People always confuse that. Energy is all type of ways how to make atoms dance, I would say. So everything that moves atoms is energy, and therefore electricity is a part, but electricity is actually the minor part. It's the easy part as well to decarbonize. Our grid can be decarbonized. Heat is an elephant in the room. That's the biggest challenge, and a lot of the major emissions come from heat processes, such like steel manufacturing and also cement manufacturing or concrete. So that's a big problem. And there's also transport fuels, everything we use to run our planes and ships and cars and so on. So that's also a big portion of the energy consumption. So it can come, what I'm saying is it can come in different shapes and forms, energy. And we would look at all of these shapes and forms, not just electricity.
Right, sure. So you're attacking the major sources of carbon pollution, so to speak, the grid, industrial heat. There's also HVAC. There's transportation. There's major manufacturing sectors like steel, cement, and
real primary energy as well. How do we create energy? There's not that many sources how we really these days create energy, right? We can use the sun, the PV. We can use the wind, which is essentially also sun, or driven by sun.
Sure.
And also other sectors such as biomass is also just another way of storing sunlight. Also fossils are just another way of storing sunlight in the end of the day. I mean, this is biomass that was created by sunlight and sunk eventually to the ground and became a hydrocarbon. But essentially, it's all powered by sunlight, and just takes different ways, and also not just shapes, but also, you mentioned the word early on, also different energy densities, because that's actually a key factor as well. That density in energy matters a lot. Those.
But I see a problem here. And that is how do you filter out ideas, because there's millions or billions of technology ideas. Humans are very creative, and
absolutely.
But a lot of those inventors have no idea of economics. And so one of the things I really appreciate about gentlemen like Peter Fikowski, check out episode 159. Okay. Peter Fikowski, Fikowsky. He's the author of Climate Restoration. Peter created a filter, right? It said, look, I'm going to do a first principles analysis of the solutions, but the answer has to be affordable, practical, scalable, and real. Like, it has to be here now, because we have to do this now. Do you have a similar kind of a filter or a system, so to speak, to measure? Because you're going to be you've got to be constantly weighing A versus B, or A versus B versus C. Where do we put our money?
Yeah, absolutely. And I always think the role of innovation here is the unknown, right? And also the beauty. That there will become, I mean, we have certain technologies today, and whatever we have today, deploy as much as we can, put capital resources, people behind it, and deploy whatever we can today. Nothing should stop us from that. However, we have challenges, specifically in what we call firm capacity or baseload energy, where we don't have great answers today, for example, where we need to work on. And this is a fairly important problem. And you can see some moves now from some of the corporates are also starting to realize that. You saw that was it Microsoft or Amazon? I think Amazon just bought a data center which is powered by nuclear power because they actually understand that in order to be on the edge of AI and be able to continuously process, they need firm capacity. They can't run it on wind and solar. So because these are so-called intermittent sources, so that there are some challenges there that we have not met yet. Yeah, and of course there are people proclaiming pathways of building large infrastructure in sunny places and then creating ammonia or any type of other energy carrier, hydrogen, and ship it around the world. I think this is theoretically a way. That's you see in most of the energy models when you take a look at it, because they're modeling with today's tools. And if you have to model with today's tools, if I'm a professor for energy systems, then this is what I could potentially model, because I don't have a crystal ball, can't foresee the future. But I don't think this is the most desirable world today. This is a very complex and very infrastructure-heavy world that we need to build an enormous amount of new infrastructure. Our game plan, because you asked for it, is typically we look at speed and scale. Clearly, we want to have stuff that comes fast. We want to have stuff that is significant, that moves the needle, that's fast taxed at 100 megatons of CO2 per annum per technology, abatement potential in the year 2050. So in the distant future, not tomorrow, the 100 megatons is extra large. But also we want to see that the technologies that we invest in are actually a net reducer by the year 2030, meaning they paid back their carbon debt for being alive today, because everybody who's alive today is consuming today's carbon budget. So, and start to become a net reducer now, or even have to become net reducer earlier to pay back the existing debt. And then from 2030 onwards, they need to be net reducers. And if it's 2031 or something, it's not the point. I'm saying in the near future is the point here. Yeah?
Sure.
And if you put these things together, those two goals together, you end up understanding that new build infrastructure is actually going to be very complicated because it takes a long time, consumes a lot of carbon debt today. You want to be ideally as close as possible to retrofitting to existing infrastructure, reutilizing or leveraging existing infrastructure. So that's how we look at it as well. What technology can we bolt on onto today's infrastructure? Yeah. So those things, and then we need, of course, some other factors as well. These are more like then capital, more like VC or like capitalistic point of views are. Obviously, we need a certain technology readiness level in order to be fast enough. We need a certain commercial traction. We need to see that there's customers out there who actually want to buy that solution and are interested in the solution. That's where the economic viability comes in. So there's a couple of factors that we put on, but it also serves as a nice exclusion criteria, to be honest, because we see interesting technologies that we totally think are worth spending resources on, but they might just not scale in time. To really save us.
I have a question about this because about markets. Think of a national highway system. The United States actually, in the process of World War II, realized the importance of a national highway system from a strategic and national security perspective. And then they set out to build one. But this was something that private companies were not going to spearhead. It was something that a government had to spearhead. So what is that balance between that grand vision and taking risk, financial risk, and putting resources behind initiatives that may not be profitable today, but are going to be hugely profitable? Like our economy exploded after we built this national highway system, right? It turned out to be an accelerant. It was kind of like a physical internet of things, right? That if we didn't have, we would not be able to have the economy that we have today. How do you see that?
I'm from Germany. The Autobahn is the thing here, right? And I think I'm not sure it's 100% true, but the myth is that Hitler built them to have troops moving faster to win a war. I think we did model our system on what we experienced in Germany. Germany was ahead of us in this regard, and we saw it as a strategic disadvantage. And so we woke up, and it's a double edge. It's a double edge. Okay, we don't have good mass transit in the United States. We have a great highway system and a car friendly culture.
which is great for burning fossil fuels, unfortunately. So it is a double edge.
Yeah, it's a double edge. Yeah. No, the what you're asking for is a political regulation question. Of course, I mean, in the energy market, it's a highly political thing. I mean, majority of the world, the wars around the world are about resources, and resources mean power and political power as well. Clearly, I mean, there's good reasons why we have previously been in conflict with a lot of petrostates, and also the conflict with Russia now is also a lot about resources. So they always play a role, a very decisive role, I would even say. So of course, therefore, it's a political good. If the access to energy means access to economic growth, and that essentially also transforms into political power. So it's always a political game. But in terms of innovation in that space, I mean, it's not. I mean, it depends on where you are. In some states, it's very regulated, and others less. But typically, always is I would say an open ear for economically viable innovation. This is really what we thrive on. We don't believe in innovation for being just there for serving political goals. They also need to really solve economic goals and make it more accessible, more affordable, more just. I mean, many different properties that it can take. But that is always, and there's always a space for that, to be honest. So we're not worried about regulation killing innovation in the space so much. However, maybe we see the other way around. Sometimes we see that innovation sometimes different interests. I mean, there's a lobby that wants to continue to use fossil because they're currently thriving on it economically. There's a lot of fossil fuel subsidies which are politically understandable, but for local community because jobs depend on it. Yeah, in the US a lot. Yeah, so you would understand why certain politicians in Dakota support fracking because a lot of jobs depend on this in this area. But it's of course ecologically it might not be desirable. Also, I mean, I actually think the US also had to learn this. By the way, I mean, this didn't come so natural, right? For the US, I think we mentioned that when we talked before that this came pretty much after 9/11, right? The US realized that we cannot be dependent on people that potentially attack us and. Therefore, we need to become energy independent and do whatever it takes for it. I think it's a bit of an attitude that sometimes missed here in Europe. Just do whatever it takes. We like to then outsource it to the Americans or to other countries and think that they will solve our problems for us instead of solving. Because there's nothing that speaks. I mean, I'm not by far. Don't quote me wrong now. I'm not for fracking. But there's also nothing stopping us from doing fracking in Europe other than it's politically not wanted. But we probably have shale gas for sure.
The Clean Power Hour is brought to you by CPS America, the maker of North America's #1 three-phase string inverter, with over 6 gigawatts shipped in the U.S. The CPS America product lineup includes three-phase string inverters ranging from 25 to 275 kW. Their flagship inverter, the CPS 250-275, is designed to work with solar plants ranging from 2 megawatts to 2 gigawatts. The 250-275 pairs well with CPS America's exceptional data communication, controls, and energy storage solutions. Go to chintpowersystems.com to find out more. So let's talk about some specific technologies that you're interested in and investing in and think are going to meet some of your goals of 100 megatons per annum. What's your short list of things that you're excited about that Extantia is involved in?
Yeah, I think anything that transitions us from hydrocarbons is interesting. Yeah, so hydrocarbon transition technologies are super interesting. Let's start with the actual source of energy. Yeah, like I mean, there is not that many. When we look at what's today available for sources, we've got all the let's call it the finite resources, which are fossils, and also uranium is a finite resource in the end of the day. And we got the renewable resources, which are by nature they're not finite, which would be of course wind and solar and geothermal and biomass and hydro. Mostly those, yeah. There's maybe some OTEC or some wave or like tidal reactors and that direction. There's a few technologies in the space. That's general categorization. We would always be most interested in the renewable sector, and then look at the intermittency of these resources, which ones can actually really transition us. Because in order to transition us, they need to be fairly like comparison to what we have today. And fossil fuels are, from a pure quality perspective, actually beautiful resources. They're easy to transport, they're highly energy dense, they're quite safe, they're affordable, there's a giant industry behind it now. They have a lot of good properties. They're so-called dispatchable. You can easily switch them on and off when you need them and when you don't need them, and they store themselves quite nicely, unlike a lot of the renewables, which are so-called intermittent resources, which if there's no, at night, obviously there's no solar energy, right? So that's
hold on a second. They're only affordable, right? Because the free dump in the sky, right? Like there's virtually, yes, we have now some clean air regulations, and we're stepping back from the totally free sky, okay? But still, it is very affordable to dump carbon into the sky.
Without a doubt.
It's very strange that you can look up and you don't see a garbage dump. It still looks like everything is fine, right? We see the blue sky. But now when you go to a major city, in China or India, you see the price, right? We are paying a health price. We humans, 6 million or more humans are dying from air pollution a year. But specifically, Could you give some examples? Let's get into some of the technologies that you're excited about. Your interview with Nate Hoggins woke me up to the possibilities of deep geo. I don't know in the relative scheme of things how important deep geothermal is to you, but are there other technologies that are decarbonizing all of these sectors that you're more excited about than deep geo?
No, absolutely. No, deep geo is the holy grail. Yeah, it really is the holy grail of energy. So it's the most fascinating resource. We have an enormous amount of energy trapped below our feet, right? Enormous. So painting the picture where everything stands in the mix of energies, what are good energies and what are not. And the problem with the intermittent renewables is that they're actually not an energy transition. They're an addition. Yeah? We are consuming more energy that we need to build out, but we're not transitioning. You're not really shutting down a coal-fired power plant because you build a solar park next to it. That's just not a like-to-like comparison. So we need to look for these like-to-like comparisons. Geothermal is a great answer for that, right? A really great one even, because it possesses all and more qualities than fossils do today. Yeah, all of the same qualities. There's really no downside to using geothermal. You can really say, I can absolutely switch off my coal plant and put a geothermal plant next to it, and it'll be the same thing, right? There's nothing extra.
So why has deep geo languished? Obviously, we know how to drill, but when you're drilling through certain types of rock, that gets very expensive and time consuming, right? We can do it, but it's expensive.
Yeah. We know how to drill for what? For oil and gas. 99% of drilling today is for oil and gas. And we have been very good at mastering that. And previously in Texas, you would drill an oil well, like in the 1940s or something, it would take you like 3 months and 400 people to do it. Today, you do it in 10 days and 4 people. Yeah, That's how we've mastered this technology of drilling over the last century. Simply because it's a very profitable thing to do. But the deep geothermal lies in hard rock. There's a different rock formation. And the one thing you do not find in hard rock is oil or gas. So hence it was never a question. We never had to invent any tools that were required to drill into granite or quartzite formations, because for sure there was no oil or gas to be found.
Oh, we had to drill tunnels. Norway and Switzerland are full of tunnels, right? Isn't that a form of hard rock drilling?
It is. Depends on some tunnels. Not too many are granite. Some are. So we can drill in granite. Tunneling is possible. It's a different story though as well, because tunneling is not under heat and under pressure. When we go deep, there's a lot of heat and a lot of pressure, so it's a different type of skill set again required. But yeah, tunneling is a application as well, where we drill, but it's quite different one. Tunnels are rarely very deep. And those tunnels you go through actually granite. There are some definitely in the Rockies or the Alps or something. There definitely some. These are tough jobs for the machines. Yeah, they take significantly longer than drilling through any other type of softer rock formation. So yeah.
So what's the breakthrough?
Deep drilling?
What's the breakthrough for deep geo that's going to unlock deep geo and define for us, if you would, what is? I mean, we have geothermal power today, but how do you define deep geo versus the standard geo?
Standard geo is quite simple. I mean, it was invented in 1904 by the Italians. They were the first ones drilling basically next to volcanoes, and found that there's heat and that they can utilize that. And that's where we see geo today as well. It's pretty much available wherever we have any type of tectonic anomaly. Could be a volcano, could be a fault. Yeah, I mean, a lot of Americans actually don't know, but the city of San Francisco is largely geothermal powered. There's a large geothermal operation just north of San Francisco, and actually it's the biggest geothermal power plant in the world. Is in the US. US utilizes geothermal to a certain degree as well, more than any other country in terms of gigawatt output. But it's still a niche. It's a very small part of the overall energy production, less than 1% in the US today. So it's despite it's big, it's still small. So, right. But that's because it's only available in very few areas. You have the San Andreas Fault, you have Hawaii, in Hawaii there's even some religious reservations against using volcanoes energy. So there's specific areas. I think Iceland is a classic one. It's a volcanic island and uses a lot of geothermal energy. Yeah. But Indonesia and some other, Japan. So that's where
in geothermal we're talking hundreds of feet. In deep geo we're talking thousands of feet or miles and kilometers. And somebody I saw recently drilled a 3-mile deep well in New Mexico as an example of deep geo.
Quite deep. Yeah, that's quite deep. Exactly. We're talking miles. We're talking 2 miles plus, at least, more like 3. Where independent where you are on the planet. Why are we drilling next to volcanoes and faults? Because simply the heat is way higher up. So we need to get to at least 150 degrees Celsius now. I'm not sure Fahrenheit. And in order to do something with the heat, that's not even efficient for electricity production. We need to go like triple that to really be efficient for electricity production, to be in a like-to-like comparison of a steam powered turbine. That's typically not available in low depths unless you're next to a volcano. Then there's some higher temperatures. I think there's some wells, and they've drilled some wells in Iceland, which are literally at like 400 or 500 degrees. And also in Italy, they're experimenting with some really hot wells. That's where it's not available. However, that's just a very few places. We need to come to more places, and that's a question. The drilling is the answer. And drilling is really the main bottleneck. There's also some subsurface work to be done later on, and how to create a very efficient heat exchanger below surface, or there's like open loop systems, closed loop systems, different types of ideas. A lot of that is traditional knowledge that we have already from today's geothermal. The question is now, how do you really get deep? And it's a different technology we need for drilling. We invested in a company called GA Drilling. They're aimed to solve that. There's also other companies across the globe that are also trying to solve this with different technologies. And it's all about the exponentiality of cost today. Every meter gets more expensive. The deeper you go, the more expensive it gets. And we need to come to technologies that are linear and agnostic of the type of rock they drill to. So these are just very different technologies than we needed for oil and gas extraction. However, that's an important part to notice, all the rest is very similar. So the oil and gas industry today possesses 80 to 90% of the knowledge that we probably need to extract the resource, also has all the people. And we just need to now innovate a bit more around how to really drill more efficiently into these hard rock formations in order to enable deep or ultra deep geothermal.
So tell us about that, though. What is the specific breakthrough that allows one to make deep drilling economical, or breakthroughs? Like, I was recently alerted to a company called Quaise Energy. Are you familiar with Quaise?
Exactly. Yeah, Quaise Carlos. He's doing millimeter wave technology. So basically making the rock through millimeter waves evaporate. Like you can imagine like a microwave, but right. A very specific one that evaporates rock. And then there is GA drilling where we invested in. They're actually using plasma, or they have different technologies, but one of them is plasma to also thermal shocking the rock, and therefore making it brittle and easy to drill. So different approaches. There's different approaches. Also, some other companies did some laser stuff in the past. So there are different approaches. It's just spending time and resources behind these technologies. I think all of them will have their place in the market. Even it's not a winner takes it all market. I think a lot of different technologies should come to market and fruition, and will just enabling a new drilling era.
So with wind and solar approaching $1 a megawatt hour or a penny a kilowatt hour, sometime in the next 10 years we'll be there. Where is deep geothermal on that spectrum? In your interview with Nate Hoggins, you talk about replacing coal and natural gas plants with deep geo. You use the existing infrastructure, which is a great idea. I love this idea.
Yeah.
And doing some deep drilling. What are the economics of this?
First of all, I mean, I think clear that there's question marks on the economics for sure. So, but generally speaking, it can be very cost competitive, and wind and solar might approach $1 per megawatt hour at a certain time of the day on a certain day. But they're definitely not 24/7 available. And if we calculate the cost of storage that's a very different cost, because storage is very expensive. And also it's also limits to storage terawatt storage capacities are not the most likely thing I would put my bet money on that they will ever come. In extra large capacity to really store like an economy over the winter, with very little wind or solar available. But there could be certain areas where it's very, very challenging to do that. Mm-hmm. But I think they really play together. It's not either or. Wind and solar and geothermal are partners. They're not either ors. So you would run some of your heat needs and also electricity needs on a consistent basis with a bit more expensive. I don't think we'll get down to $1, but we can probably get quite competitive. It depends on the depth in the end of the day. All depends on temperature. If we really are able to access, there's the so-called supercritical geothermal. That's probably the holy grail of geothermal, and often described as the fusion of geothermal because it's kind of a bit of a avant-garde concept. That is, water can take a supercritical state when we are at 274 degrees Celsius and 200 bars of pressure. And that state, it actually is able to conduct about 10 times more energy than in a normal state, fluid or gaseous state. So it's a mix between those two states. That would probably allow for very efficient energy production, probably also around the $2 mark, but nobody's been there. So I wouldn't put that, just by doing some basic calculations, you would assume it can become very cheap, but let's not go that way. I think any energy source that can come in $4, $5, $6 and have does not require storage is extremely competitive and a great companion to solar.
So how long do you think we are away from being able to, okay, I get it with shallow geothermal, you go to those places in the Earth's crust where the heat is shallow and access to that is shallow, and we should definitely pursue those opportunities. And then in the long run, where the heat is deeper down, where you have to go several, let's just say a mile or two, how far away do you think we are from going to some random, 100 megawatt natural gas or coal plant and replacing it with deep geo at that scale?
It depends a bit. I mean, first, J Drilling is pursuing its first commercial project in the next 12 months. So actually not that far away.
Do you know where that's going to be?
They're actually going to, I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. It could be in the US, could be in Europe. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
Probably in the US, but would have to ask the company at this stage. So they're pursuing their first commercial project in that time, and that will not be, this will go step by step. The innovation you will not immediately replace 100 mega watt coal plant, the first goal you would actually go for are district heating networks. It's easy to replace, even easier to retrofit than a power plant. All you need is a heat source and basically feed into that system. That's quite straightforward.
Sure.
And that'll be the first goals. And there's plenty of district heating networks that could be utilized for that. And then later on, you could also retrofit power plants. But again, we're not talking 20, 40 or 50 here. We're talking in the next 5 years. You could do all of this.
Yeah.
And maybe to put a scale to it as well, is always an interesting number. It's mind-boggling, actually. It would require about 600,000 wells of the size of, 7 or 9 inches or something. That a classic geothermal well is wise. 600,000 of those wells to pretty much meet all of our power needs from geothermal.
You mean on Earth?
Addition of some other sources. On Earth, 600,000 wells.
Okay. Actually,
a ridiculously small number, considering that the oil and gas industry is drilling about 100,000 wells per year for oil and gas.
So in 10 years, although those wells are the oil and gas wells going? How deep are those going?
It depends completely where you are. You can be really deep, offshore specifically, can be really deep.
Okay.
We've seen oil and gas wells at several miles as well.
Okay.
But also very shallow in Canada at only a couple hundred.
So if we make the drilling fast, if we make the drilling into hard rock faster, then we could be doing 100,000 wells, a deep geo a year.
Yeah, absolutely. The scalability of the drill bits, let's say, is not a problem. You could build as many drill bits as you would have to do in order to do the job. That's not a limitation factor.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time.
The factor is more about the ability, actually, availability of drill rigs. And so I said that's why it's scalable, because actually drill rigs we have a lot. And we're utilizing them for 100,000 wells per year. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I do like this, that you can take the oil and gas industry and make a right turn and start doing deep geo with that technology, obviously augmented and modified for hard rock drilling. Oil and gas drilling is not hard rock drilling, right?
Exactly. And by the way, they're also quite aware of it. I mean, there was Sarah Week in Houston just the other day, in March now, and there was a lot of talk about that in town about geothermal. And actually in Houston, we see quite a cluster of geothermal companies nowadays that are innovating in the space. So it's not that we still have to wake that giant, but slowly everybody's sort of waking him up, and the oil and gas industry is clearly on board for exploring opportunities. They don't want to miss that. It's their chance.
So listeners, please check out all of our content at cleanpowerhour.com. Tell a friend about the show. That is a great way to get more people educated about all the possibilities for the energy transition. And reach out to me on LinkedIn. I love hearing from my listeners. Sebastian, how can our listeners find you?
First of all, Tim, thanks for the chat. Really interesting. And by the way, really appreciate your show. You've been doing this for quite a while and been covering a wide range of topics. So really great. Thanks for having me today. You can also reach out to me on LinkedIn. Absolutely. I'm out on LinkedIn. Or we can also find more about us at extantia.com. That's extantia.com, which is where you can also contact us, but see all about our work. And we also have a Medium blog where we sort of publish on what we do. We obviously cover a lot more range than we're able to cover in this talk today. And but maybe we do a sequel one day on other technologies.
Yeah, we just scratched the surface, no pun intended, here today, but I really appreciate your time, Sebastian. Thank you for what you're doing with Extantia. And let's grow solar and storage. I'm Tim Montague. Take care. Hey, listeners. This is Tim. I want to give a shout out to all of you. I do this for you twice a week. Thank you for being here. Thank you for giving us your time. I really appreciate you and what you're all about. You are part and parcel of the energy transition, whether you're an energy professional today or an aspiring energy professional. So thank you. I want to let you know that the Clean Power Hour has launched a listener survey, and it would mean so much to me if you would go to cleanpowerhour.com, click on the About Us link right there on the main navigation. That takes you to the About page, and you'll see a big graphic, Listener Survey. Just click on that graphic, and it takes just a couple of minutes. If you fill out the survey, I will send you a lovely baseball cap with our logo on it. The other thing I want our listeners to know is that this podcast is made possible by corporate sponsors. We have Chin Power Systems, the leading three-phase string inverter manufacturer in North America. So check out CPS America. But we are very actively looking for additional support to make this show work. And you see here our media kit with all the sponsor benefits and statistics about the show. You know, we're dropping 2 episodes a week. We have now over 320,000 downloads on YouTube, and we're getting about 45,000 downloads per month. So this is a great way to bring your brand to our listeners, and our listeners are decision makers in clean energy. This includes project executives, engineers, finance, project management, and many other professionals who are making decisions about and developing, designing, installing, and making possible clean energy projects. So check out cleanpowerhour.com, both our listener survey on the About Us and our media kit, and become a sponsor today. Thank you so much. Let's grow solar and storage. The Clean Power Hour is brought to you by CPS America, the maker of North America's #1 three-phase string inverter, with over 6 gigawatts shipped in the U.S. The CPS America product lineup includes three-phase string inverters ranging from 25 to 275 kW. Their flagship inverter, the CPS 250-275, is designed to work with solar plants ranging from 2 megawatts to 2 gigawatts. The 250-275 pairs well with CPS America's exceptional data communication, controls, and energy storage solutions. Go to chinpowersystems.com to find out more.